Welcome back to the Brothers Mahoney. This is Michael,
And I am James.
and today we are discussing The End of the War, the somewhat lackluster title of the fifth and final episode of The War Between the Land and the Sea, which is, of course, a Doctor Who spin-off which has so far been airing only in the UK. But as we've said before, the internet knows no borders, and we've watched along with, I have to imagine, the millions of UK people watching. And I just wrote up this generic plot come at me from after one last devastating attack by humanity, Aquakind face dark times. And like the first episode of the season, this was written by Russell T Davies, aired December 21st, 2025. I was hoping this might be a little bit longer since the previous episodes have aired back to back with another one. I was hoping this might be more like movie length, but it was not to be. It was like, what, 53 minutes maybe?
Yeah, close to 54 minutes at the most.
Yeah. So nothing extravagant. And as far as characters go, we have Barclay Pierre DuPont, played by Russell Torvoy. We have a little bit of Barbara and Corby, played by Anne Akingerin and Kat Gannon, respectively. Salt, played by Gugu Bathar Ra, and also a little bit of Tide, played by Samuel Otley. Then we have some of the usual suspects being Kate Lethbridge Stewart, played by Gemma Radgrave, and Ruth Melody playing Shirley. And sure, a couple other people appear. Like, you might hope there'll be some sort of conclusion, for instance, with the Prime Minister. And I'm not saying they don't appear, but honestly, the characters I just listed are the ones you get the most focus. So we open up with just an indication of how Kate's doing. She is being denied return to active duty by the psychiatrist who sort of, well, just to make sure she's stable, and Kate's not. Unfortunately, Kate is no longer bound by such mortal rules.
Yeah, so she blackmailed her psychiatrist. I mean, it's what we all do, isn't it? It's probably not a good thing, but on the other hand, I don't know. I just didn't care enough to be like, well, am I supposed to be angry at Kate? I completely understand her reasons for wanting to stay in charge of this. Now, at the end of the day, it didn't matter one way or the other who was in charge. Certain actions would have gone down. But honestly, I just liked the scene. I thought it was a dark tone, and I have to say it was absurd that they used the little jump scare sound when she started to blackmail her. Like, we don't need that. At least I would think if you're as above average intelligence, and maybe that's the problem, you wouldn't need a scare sound to realize, oh wait, this is something that she usually would do, and but no, conversations shift to become darker now. Besides that, though, I actually like the scene. I just that little thing annoyed me a bit.
And I do think it's clear that it's the beginning, or maybe even not the beginning, but just a further dive into her villain arc, which we'll be talking about a bit later. And we also have what I would say is one of the main issues of the episode as a whole, as somewhat of a tonal inconsistency, because the episode opens with an attack by Aquakind on the dogs of humanity, and by that I mean they call forth with a horn, they call forth other dogs of the small village. The dogs scored them, and apparently they ate the dogs. And I have to say, I'm not saying the tone was comedic, but it seemed subject matter did seem like it was tackled in somewhat. I feel like it wasn't tackled with the seriousness of situation like that would deserve, because it's like, oh hey, you ate the dogs, and like, hey, you eat the fish. It just didn't feel like it was taken seriously. For like, in my opinion, very clearly an unnecessary atrocity in my view.
I suppose you could call it an atrocity. It's one of those things where, again, I'm sorry, I suppose you take that seriously. I know they want me to take it seriously, but again, Michael is right. It was played in a slightly comedic way, but I kind of just ignore that.
I will say I do think it was clearly meant to show, at least in that specific instance, that the Aquacan was in the wrong.
Maybe. The point that you eat the fish and they're our family when the boss that the human ambassador could come up with, and by the way, right now it's the British guy, after all that Barclay has gone through, he is no longer being the ambassador, which is completely understandable from the side of the humans, most of them. But the boss, the English guy, could come up with this, our pets are domesticated. Which, yeah, I get that. No human is going to watch that and shadow the sea devils, the aqua kind, the homo aquas, whichever nomenclature they prefer. If you're a sea devil, hit us up, let us know, and ignore the fact they just called you a sea devil. Again, it's just how to take seriously, so I barely take that into account when considering the tally of Homo Aqua versus humankind in this miniseries.
I mean, based on the Andean tide, it's technically a bit higher because apparently all this time, Homo Aqua, spoiler, has been I say the bad guys. I think both sides were not great, but apparently Homo Aqua's melting the ice caps since before the first, I guess, meeting between the two even happened. So it's nice.
I mean, but the thing is, humans have been doing that anyway.
My
It's
point
one.
is, it did sort of what you said that you worried it might do that show like the Aqua kind of being antagonistic. Because even
Well,
if the humans were too, so is Aqua kind.
see, but the thing is, I don't really count that as antagonistic. I count that self-defense. Self-defense isn't antagonistic in of itself.
I mean, it was under the guise of them not doing that.
Yeah,
Like,
but
was it
they.
that whole armistice so that we were so angry that one side was going against, but the other side obviously was too.
Yeah, I suppose. But at the same time, if they're going to get out of the leeway in the war, they were genocided by the humans. Like, I frankly don't really care that they're going to flood the earth.
It,
From the perspective of Homo Aqua, it was the most reasonable thing to do because of the way humans are, and apparently they sort of flooded it faster.
I'm simply pointing out that the show itself is showing that both sides were wrong, which I think is questionable, given that, well, like James said, much of what the Aquakind did was arguably self-defense. But I don't think that's the point the show is trying to make.
No, it's not. And you're right that there is kind of the fear I had coming from someone like Pete McTighe, who infamously, in my opinion, wrote Kablam, and the justifications you see for that writing can be found, but it's not worth reading.
Yeah, and in the last episode, we saw when Kate was speaking to Tide, Tide made threats of something he called rust, where, was it, water and air combined makes rust, so he's going to rust everyone. And then in this episode, they go a different route.
I think the point is he was going to rust the armaments, the cities.
I get that, but my point is, it was like it's sort of random. It's like random red herring that never comes up again, and we just find out in this one, oh no, I'm just going to fly you guys instead. So my point was he's changing tactics up in this, bro.
Oh, it is slightly impressive. It shows how many different ways they could destroy them, which
Well,
his boast comes into play in that point.
yeah, his boast being the Apple Classic, this was never a war. This was an inconvenience, which unfortunately might be chopped down to a famous last word situation. Because while it's true that the Aqua kind have seemingly very high amounts of technology, I mean, you saw what they did in the Plastic Apocalypse. And still no idea how they did that, by the way. We'll never find out. But apparently, they're very technologically advanced in many aspects. Unfortunately, and I have to admit, I didn't see this coming. I guess I didn't give it a deep amount of thought. And hey, more spoilers, but it's been like a week since the episode came out, and fight me, bro. 90% of Aqua kind is wiped out by I guess you could say a biological weapon. I guess it's fair.
Yeah, a biological weapon like the US used on North Korea back in the 50s. Read up on it.
And the unfortunate thing is, it's somewhat of a matter of timing. Now, just to be clear, now we are recording this multiple days after the episode aired, but we haven't necessarily talked a lot about the episode. So I just want to be clear, the biological weapons started when Clay met with Salt, right? When they kissed, that sort of opened the biological warfare.
Well, yeah, that's right. In fact, it's out.
Yeah,
Because we saw a plan going to motion of the two genres.
and I want to set this up quickly because it's sort of funny. So after the event of last episode, of course, they were on the bridge. Clay got taken in by unit. We never really saw much follow-up on the side note of the unit holding guns to British soldiers, did we? Like, we didn't see anything
Not
related.
that, not that I remember, that would have been the interesting part.
Yeah, I would have been like I said, they don't really have much in the way of finality when it comes to like the prime minister or the conspiracy or anything like that. It's sort of disappointing. But point being, South got away. She swam into the waters. Barclay was taken in, and apparently Barclay has been sneaking out every single night because there's some people on his, I guess, security team who I guess quote unquote believe him and they want to help him out. And what's actually happening is that they're being paid to make sure he gets out, and it's all a ploy because as Barclay is going out each night, and I sort of like this dramatic retelling. It's sort of artistic, but that's a sort of ridiculous. Like each night he goes out to the nearest water and he shouts Salt's name, hoping to find her again. And it just seems like as he's telling this story, I can't believe his ex-wife is listening to like, yeah, I got you, fam.
Honestly, when you started to break down the end of the toweling about how unseen novel answers And I get that we talked about love is love and all of that. I'm sorry, it's still a bit ridiculous to me.
Yeah, as
You
far
have
as
to
it
name it
sounds,
that.
it's been sort of lampshaded for like multiple episodes. Like, hey, what is it between these two? I guess it's just love. Apparently, it's. I mean, you could argue that Sal answered it, like, oh, the tides forged between the sea, or whatever the fuck she said in the last episode. But yeah, I'm not buying it. I guess it's just, hey, this chemistry, bruh. That's all it takes. And I do think that Rasa Tovoy does a really good job with the material he has. I think it's a really emotional performance. I just don't entirely buy the fact there's no actual reason. It really is just like a true love type situation. But it's used to its disadvantage when there's some type of biological weapon placed into him one night before he goes to meet Salt. He actually does meet Salt. And it comes to a whole thing, oh, they lower the something in the ocean. They're like repelling some sound waves. I actually phased out doing that sciencey part. But point being, they were dampening the, I guess, telepathy between Aquakind, so they, I guess, couldn't communicate with each other, which led to South and Rasatovoi meeting again and having a nice reunion. And then, hey, 2 days later, 90% of the population of Aquakind is dead, which
Imagine
is
that.
apparently what Sovereigns meant all along.
Yeah, I guess I need to go back and rewatch that scene in episode 3 because I thought it was clear that Saffron's was the whole thing where the delegate bombed the meeting. And I know they had talked about it at the end of last episode, but I thought it was going to be because UNIT was going to uncover the Prime Minister and the January's involvement in that plot and the assassination of Keith Spears. And yet they dropped basically all of that. And there's a whole scene where there's an encounter between Kate Lethbridge Stewart and the Prime Minister about how the Prime Minister will be forgotten or just be replaced by somebody who's more anti-Aqua kind. And through it out, Kate will be there. And that's nice and all, but that's not uncovering his involvement in the murder assassination of somebody who was one of his donors who had bombed a peace meeting.
Yeah, and I do think that, no, I don't think it's necessarily made clear, but I don't think Keith Spears, well, maybe Keith Spears did, but I don't think that Johnny or the Prime Minister had anything to do with the bombing at the peace treaty, or what was supposed to be like a peace treaty type thing. I mean, that was like set up to be some other institute who I forget the name of because it wasn't properly explained, in my opinion.
Well, I'm still not completely unconvinced that both Januaries knew about them just let it happen while continuing the other plot. But like I said, I'll need to rewatch
Yeah, and like
those again.
from the beginnings, I knew that Sovereigns wasn't the whole attempted assassination of Southern Aquakind, just because of the way they were talking about it in, I think, episode 4, I don't know. But I had no idea what Sovereigns was. I actually thought it was going to be something where they tried to, well, I thought it was specifically going to be infecting South with something. I didn't think about a biological weapon, but hey, you know what? It makes sense, and it, like James said, it sort of fits with, unfortunately, in the what's been done in the past, so it's historical too. A lot of it has to do with some poor timing. Of course, it was planned, but when Sauda's meeting with Clay for the first time in, I don't know, I'll just say a month. That sounds right. She gave him some advice, like, hey, if he brings up in accord with Aqua Kind, apparently that holds an ancient meaning to Aqua Kind. Now, as to what that means, I forget, do humans become fish? They make some type of reference toward the end. You know, that was then. My point being that there was a theoretical path to peace. Unit was willing to work with Barclay to sound out the message of accord, despite the fact that they indeed might be labeled traitors by the UK government. Kate, Shirley, Barclay, all of them were willing to be arrested just to spread this message. Which, you know, it's a nice thought. Unfortunately, it literally comes to nothing because, like we said, I think a couple of days pass and they get no reply back. And then we find out that, hey, through a dramatic speech from South, who is one of the 1 in 10 that actually survived, which seems awfully convenient, but hey, whatever. We find out from South that things are not going well for Aquakind.
And humans had known this in general because the bodies of Aquakind have been coming up on shores for the last few days all around the world. Australia, New York, I forget everywhere. So I just remember the New York Statue of Liberty. And there were bodies of the sea divers killed by genocide by the Western powers. Again, I'll point out the Daniel was an American and a French person. So take with that as you will. I'd like to think there's a little basedness in McTighe for that writing, but I don't know if it's quite there yet. But Tide's speech was pretty strong. I disagree with certain actions taken, but perhaps there were reasons. Basically, she says that humans have won the war. Their species has been decimated. There's 90% of them are dead. But according to South, the humans do not get everything they want because Aquakind has demolished their technology, the weapons they had, so humans don't get access to them, which is probably a very good idea, considering some of those weaponry. And they destroy those bases, those weapons, whatnot, and they're at the very bottom of the sea where, according to South, humans cannot get to them, which is a nice thought. But now the humans know that they'll probably be doing a race to who can build the best submersible faster just to get to the weapons.
The joys of capitalism, am I right?
Yeah, most likely. And at one point, Kate says, "Well, we'll give you the Mariana Trench." Maybe it was the Mariana Trench. They'll give them a certain place in the ocean where all of Aquakind can be safe. I'll point out the maximalist goal from Aquakind was all the oceans are ours, also the sky above the ocean is ours. But what does UNIT offer? And I know it's not just UNIT, it's Kate on behalf of the whole peace delegation. They get a small bit of water. Yes, and it's a deep trance. That's nice and all, but it's just a reservation.
Well, I was going to say it has to be comparable with some United States history, the Native American reservations that we forced them to go on to. Like
Yeah,
we're doing them a
and then
favor. Like they used to
yeah.
have all this land, and we're just putting them in like a quarter of what they used to have, if not much worse, and
Oh,
say, "Oh, hey, it's all okay."
yeah. Not only is it much worse, we keep taking more and more land from them. They have treaties. I don't think the United States is actually sold by its treaty obligations in a single instance with any Native American treaty. Every single one that the government has made with the Native American tribes has been ignored. So it's not like this is something that is completely unexpected. This is probably how humans should deal with Aquakind in this reality. But that's part of why it took so long to talk about this. It's just too depressing of an episode, for one. And two, I'm also slightly sick, so if my voice sounds off, that's going to be part of it.
I actually don't think it's a depressing episode of it all. Like it partially is, but because it's so tonally inconsistent, and the ending is arguably sort of uplifting. Well, let me phrase. By ending, I mean the ball clay and salt streaming out into the seas is uplifting, whereas the other actual ending may not be. But we'll talk about that shortly.
So, but that's the type of uplifting that annoys the hell out of me. Yay! You genocided 90% of his pieces, and the other 10% are forced into what Salt considers a hunting reservation because he picks up a picture of humans just laughing and holding a dead Aquakind up, as humans would do.
Yeah, probably an American. But yeah, after that nice speech by South, there's a moment where like the waterway that they created, they flooded, so it sort of floods out the building. Barclay's standing there as it's happening. To me, it looked like he's willing to go down with the ship. He wasn't sure if he would even see South again, and you got blame like maybe South would want to see him. South, through all of that, knew that he had no knowledge of it. I mean, obviously, she's trusted him since the beginning. As she said, he is her favorite human. But unfortunately, toward the end of this, he may no longer be human. And like, I'll be honest, this is one thing that wasn't clear to me. And I've only seen this episode once, and like I said, it's been like a week. Why exactly, or how did Barclay become a fish?
The only thing I could think of was when she did the Heidelberg chamber when she saved him at the beginning of episode 4 and took him all the way up to the surface of the water. That somehow there was a change in him from that. Or maybe, I don't know. It doesn't really say how, from what I can recollect, but that's all I could really glean.
Yeah, maybe there's some conversation between some scientists from UNIT and Kate that I missed. I don't know. We just find out that toward the end, Kate takes, and to be fair, I forget what song is playing in the background. It was a nice song. There was a scene which showed Barclay, and I'll be like straight up, without the low key sassiness bras. I actually thought we were going to see Barclay get assassinated during the scene because we see security all around him trying to usher him to a vehicle, but people break through the fences. I thought we were going to see him assassinated, which really would
I
have been depressing.
I also thought the same thing, actually.
Yeah. So it's not clear to me if that's what we were supposed to think. If that's what we were sort of led that way, maybe it was. But that's where I thought it was going, which I do think would have made this whole thing like not the happiest piece of Doctor Who media. But no, Kate is able to save him, and she takes him to the water where he reunites with Southern, like we alluded to. He grows gills, and they swim off happily ever after, which, again, you can say what you want about the relationship, but I do, in general, like the relationship. So I do like that aspect. Like, yeah, sure, 90% of her species is now dead via genocide, but hey, at least those two get a happy story together.
Well, I hope he's a good therapist because I'm sure she's going to have some PTSD from the genocide of her species. And furthermore, it wasn't quite clear to me if she was going to take the deal. Well, let me rephrase that. She said that Aquakind would do anything humanity wanted because Aquakind is scared of humans, which, I mean, is understandable. But see, this is where I think they went a little wrong. What they sort of done, and maybe there were different reasons this could have worked. But if I'm an Aquakind at this point after the genocide and I live, first thing I do is go to our weaponry to both melt the ice caps and rust the warlord. And if we can operate with who we have left, we'll do both of those. Because if you're going to genocide 90% of our species and there's almost nothing left of us, then we're going to genocide 90% of your species. Deal with it. At this point, what do they have to lose? What, they're going to go live in a reservation when they could just take down humanity who genocided them? I frankly don't know why they did it just. And I get that maybe they had some type of meeting among who was left and they decided, no, we'll go to your reservation. But that I don't think is the action they should have taken. They should have gone to that peace meeting and said, you genocided us. I know it wasn't all of you. Not my problem. Deal with it. Get rusted. That's how it should have gone. But they took a way out where we get a nice personal happy ending with Barclay and South, which is nice, and the song was quite nice. It was in some ways a beautiful scene, but with the subtext knowing everything else going on besides that, it kind of loses it for me. And movies try to do things like that all the time, where we get to see a person have their own happy ending, even though something more important in the major scheme of things goes wrong. So that type of thing kind of annoys me, and that's certainly noticeable in this one, because it was very obvious that's what the song, the emotions of the song was supposed to get the viewer to think, oh, Barclays with South, it's great, ignore the genocide, which just happened. I think there's slightly mixed messages when it comes to what we are supposed to feel at this point in the episode.
Well, I'll say again, going back to the beginning, that's why I say it felt to me tonally inconsistent, which was also a complaint I lodged at The Witch of the Waterfall. And I feel like it just continued on here. It just didn't have quite the finality, the resolutions that you would expect. Like James said, Kate had a conversation with the Prime Minister, and it wasn't a bad conversation. But, I wanted more accountability, and we didn't get anything like that. Just that, oh, you're in the future, you might be remembered poorly. Like, ooh, he's shaking, I'm sure. But it just didn't feel like that satisfactory conclusion you'd want to see. I think that's the main issue.
The best we get at a resolution for the entire conspiracy arc are premonitions and threats from South saying that the water will remember. And she explained it a little better than that. But that's
Only
kind
a
of what
little, though, because those were some strange sequences, in my opinion. Like, it just felt so random.
Yeah, it felt like McTighe thought there had to be repercussions, because the actually Search Society gave repercussions because that would be too revolutionary and too against order, which is all that liberals in the unlike him support. The order and rule of law, even the rule of law is destroying us all.
Hey, haven't you heard that if ICE had more female agents, it would be okay?
I can't say anything about ICE without getting our channel blasted from you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we might violate terms of service if we talk about ICE, but that's all I've got to say.
Maybe it's because of that. Maybe he just didn't know how to write it in a realistic way. That could also just be true. But we just see the Prime Minister and the American general and the French general, who since they don't get the resolution, I'm not going to give their names, have, I guess, premonitions of them being drowned by Watto, one, the Prime Minister getting drowned in his Sarah, which I believe had pretty bad special effects as well. And then the American general and the French general, for some reason, in the same car, even though this is a premonition of something in the future, and they'll probably not have much to do with each other after this, hypothetically, getting drowned in the same car. And so those didn't actually happen, but I'm not sure if it's implied that they were certainly going to happen, if that was only the fear of it happening.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it was particularly clear on that or a lot of points, to be honest. But that's the type of thing that could easily happen when you're trying to rush a story with only 5 episodes, which I feel is a bit of a shame, but there you are.
It all comes down to where you want to put your focus. And I think this could have been a much better done story if they had changed and tightened up some of the focus that they decided to give certain subplots.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that James has had since the beginning is that whether this series will insist upon itself, whether or not it will have a purpose past this present moment. And I think the only purpose it has, this is just my opinion, and we will see if this actually leads this way. But in my view, the only purpose for the series is to show Kate's villain arc. In the future, she will become some villain, and I don't know where it's going. She can fight the Doctor. It's going to be fun. I don't know, but I do know is whether or not that's going to happen. It's clear to me, we the audience is supposed to think she's going down that path because at the beginning, of course, we saw her try to blackmail successfully her psychologist. Whether or not you think she's in the right, whether or not you think she had her reasons, that was obviously not the quote unquote right thing to do. And it's possible we saw elements of this pop up in, I guess, Lucky Day or the bin when she was sounding the shriek after Conrad. You could see maybe elements of a little more playful nature in her. But I think it's turned up to 11, certainly during the blackmail scene, where it does come across as sinister, like, hey, you either say I'm fit for duty oh, I'm going to tell people about the affair you had 18 years ago. It does seem certainly more vindictive.
Or maybe she should have had an affair. I don't know to tell you. Like, the thing is, I supported Kate when she sent the shriek on Conrad. I
Yeah,
thought,
I didn't this necessarily go against it. I don't think it's a particularly great image. But I did have a giant issue with that. But certainly, I do think Black Men and the Psychologist I put more in the neutral to wrong section. And the end of the episode is, well, no matter what you think about environmentalism, the ending is, I know, like I say, I think it's clearly setting up for villain arc. Because at the end of this episode, after South and Barclay have the nice little swim off into the ocean, we see just this random guy on the beach. He's listening to some music, I think, on his CD play, and he just throws like a plastic bottle or something onto the beach. And Kate, and keep in mind, Kate's been through a lot. She recently lost Abraham. I have to imagine her sleep's still erratic. Again, she was not cleared fit for duty at the beginning of the episode, but she just bypassed that. So she obviously has been going through a lot, and I think she's reached her breaking point because as she sees this guy just literally and casually after this whole thing's been going on, and maybe this guy's like a Dan and Noble type guy, just hasn't been noticing. Like, who Aqua Khan? What you talking about? It's possible. She politely at first asks him to, hey, could you please pick that up? But then she gets a little more aggro as she continually says, pick it up, pick it up. And to villain arc, she literally pours out her gun on him, screaming at him, pick it up, pick it up. She literally looks insane, suddenly unhinged. Maybe that's more the thing. It's not even going to be a villain arc. It's just going to be her mental instability. And hey, that could be actually interesting. But the question is, like I said, this was written by Russell T Davies. So the question is that going to actually be continued? Because if they just ignore that in the future, then the series literally has no meaning. Because,
well, I mean, in that case, it would be anti-meaning.
yeah, I was going to say raise your hands if you think Barclay is going to reappear. And no, maybe in 5 years he'll get like a Southern Barclay Big Finish collection.
Oh, see, I thought it was going to be Barclay and the Fist.
Yeah, see, there you go. But I just don't see it. The only point of this is going to be what happens with Kate in the following seasons of Doctor Who, assuming we get following seasons. Like, I know we have that one Christmas pass or what next year.
Yes.
But past that point, we don't know anything. And to my knowledge, we don't know anything. And I'm not sure if you know anything yourself.
I haven't seen anything recently on that. I just know there's going to be the Christmas one.
Yeah, so as far as we know, the only other future Doctor Who has is well, I guess we also have that one cartoon thingy, but I think that's explicitly non-canon. I actually can't remember.
I forgot about that because I don't want to know about it.
Hey, we'll watch and we can talk about every single episode. We'll be there, bro.
We're not watching that. I veto that.
Oh, but I am veto it. Come at me, fam. But yeah, I'll say I'm sort of interested, like, if they actually follow up on this whole Kate mental breakdown thing. I'm sort of interested because that's the type of thing I think that Shirley would be able to recognize, like, immediately. Like, hey, Kate's not doing well. Let me look into this. Oh, hey, maybe I should take over unit for a while. Like, maybe it's going to be like a unit civil war. I don't know. Maybe, sounds maybe interesting. Like, hey, maybe the Doctor comes back and they just assume Kate's right and tries to help Kate, and it could be a whole thing. It could go back to classic, where there could be a companion on one side of unit and the doctor on the other side, and it could be fun.
I mean, we already know that Unit has Mal and Rose, Noble, and Bill and
Oh,
other
okay. Yeah,
characters.
you're technically not wrong, but we wouldn't know that from watching this, would we?
They have, I'm assuming, other operations going on, and people have pointed out on Twitter, they haven't been on Twitter much after this. I kind of assume people were thinking of it highly on the whole. But last time I was there, I do recall seeing a lot of 14th Doctor memes of him just lounging in a chair while a genocide is happening to a species that you think he would what genocided. So great job there, Doctor.
He just wants a quiet life after the war.
They literally did it by generation for no reason. It's just so stupid. They literally gained nothing out of it,
But it was
in my
super
opinion.
cool. We got to see the Rani come from Mrs. Flood. What's that, Coolio?
Well, no, but I think that even made it worse.
It was
I don't know.
hyper cool, bro.
No. I mean, this episode is never going to be my favorite of this series. I think tonally it was unusual. Like I said, it's slightly depressing when you consider the genocide of his species, as powerful as Aqua Kind Warm. And like I said, I think they took the wrong path there. Maybe I'm too vindictive in my how they don't know. But I do think the path I suggested would have been the better one to take from their perspective. And guess if we don't know, it doesn't really matter. But I guess we do know a bit about the breeding cycle with the way that Sat was explaining it. So maybe the population can grow, and then I guess they'll have more meetings with humankind. And I'll point out
They're going to grow up and get their revenge.
exactly what was that from.
Night and Territory.
Ah, yes, Night and Territory. Goosebumps. Classic TV Goosebumps. Watch it with the understanding it was made for children in the 90s. That's my advice. Well, we did watch that growing up, by the way, though. Pretty fun stuff. But I suppose it's just going to lead to more meetings. They're going to need more space because they have more members of the species. Either that or they'll just, as Salt predicted, just get hunted down by humankind. Either way, I'm pretty sure we're never in the future going to hear a companion mention the Aquakind Reservation. I'd be very surprised if anybody remembers to bring it up, that is now something that canonically exists in the Doctor Who universe on Earth 2025 and up. Again, that's the joys of time travel stories. The second you get to that time period, you're contradicting what we saw in a previous episode done 30 years ago.
Not necessarily contradicting, because let's be giving some more context.
Oh, sure, but you could also just plainly contradict him, which is an inevitable side effect of doing time travel, basically.
Yeah, and I'll say for my part, I don't think it was a terrible episode. There were some moments I think that stood out, but unfortunately, as a miniseries overall, I really don't think the war between the land and the sea did what it was really hoping to. Like, I have no idea what the viewing numbers were. I've heard that they were maybe better than some episodes of like the last season of God was. I have no idea, but I don't really think that it lived up to the potential. Certainly, that I think the first two episodes, and again, I don't even think the first episode was that great, but I do think the first two, even the first three, because I think the third episode, being the deep, was also really solid overall. Like, you have three decent to high end episodes, and then you have, unfortunately, what I would call it somewhat tonally inconsistent with episodes 4 and 5, and it's just, as a whole, it sort of leaves like a bad taste in your mouth. Like, it's not a bad show, but I mean, honestly, well, I can imagine watching some moments of this again. Could you imagine wanting to see the whole 5 episodes again, like anytime soon? Like, sure, we'll pick up on Blu-ray, I guess, when it comes out in the US, but is that something I'm going to be hankering to watch?
No, I would think not. I don't really think the show justified itself. I suppose you have to be right that the only reason it ever existed was to show a Kate story, but one, that's something you set up a little more than they have, and hey, maybe that was the entire point of Abraham's character, just to be the one who dies to drive Kate down this path.
That's some good foresight. I literally can't remember when Abraham first appeared. Was it some 14th Doctor thing? Giggle?
I think it was the giggle.
Was he in the Star Beast? I'm not. Can't
No,
remember.
you're right. You're right. He was in the Star Beast. He was I would need to rewatch the Star Beast to remember exactly. But you know, he was one of the main people in the Star Beast, I think. And if he wasn't, then that's why I don't remember, because he's not an important character, except for the fact that he died the way he did to get Kate down this path. He is the one stuffed in the refrigerator, I believe the trope is. But regardless of Abraham, I can't take a Kate going down a dark path seriously because Woowies is screaming at somebody for littering. And once again, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't be littering in front of a government official. Maybe you shouldn't be such a dick. And you talk about how Kate escalated. You're not wrong, she escalated. But so did the guy for being as much as a dick as he was. Like, someone just saw you litter. Accept the fact, pick up what you littered, throw it away properly, and don't be a dick. I don't know. I'm not going to side with him. Maybe Kate should have shot him too. Hopefully that's how the scene ended. And that we didn't get to see. But there was just a genocide of a species that was complaining about pollution, and we said in, I think, the second episode, it's not just humans the main problem with all the giant corporations, but if your humans are acting like this, that doesn't help anything. It doesn't help optics, and it doesn't help the actual material situation.
Yeah, I don't think Pick It Up explains any of that, though.
It doesn't, but the guy sucked. So I don't know, I can't really hate Kate too much for that.
As far as he's concerned, some crazy woman on the beach posted a gun on him just because he dropped something. Perspective-wise, I think Kate clearly comes out... I don't care how much of a dick the guy was. Kate clearly comes out looking unhinged there.
But she only comes out looking... If they had put heroic music behind it instead of unsettling music...
Then they would have been wrong.
It would have changed the tone slightly. A lot of the way you feel about scenes is based on the music that plays behind the scene. That just comes down to psychology. So I don't know. Sure, she looked enhanced, and she wasn't explaining anything because of everything that you had mentioned that she had been through. They tried to make the peace deal, and yet they still get genocided anyway. The Aqua kind. And of course, Abraham dying. So yeah, she didn't explain anything. But I don't know. Maybe don't be an idiot. Like, that's so, like, to do that right after the events, and maybe he didn't know, but regardless, it's so stupid. Somebody like him who needs him anyway. Don't know to tell you.
But yeah, if you agree with holding guns on people's beaches or not, let us know down below in the comments. And also let us know what you thought about the miniseries as a whole, too. Whether or not you think it'll just be forgotten in 2 days, or you think it will live to be one of the best Doctor Who spin-offs this side of class. So, yeah, that's all I've got. But anything else before we head on out, bro?
I don't know why you need to say it that way, but these 5 episodes would probably have been better solved padding on to maybe a season, maybe both seasons, but I don't know what 2 more episodes would have done of Doctor Who proper instead of being just a miniseries, moving along a story arc about Kate that might never come to any real fruition. I mean, I suppose they could use Big Finish to end it if they really had to, but I don't think that's going to work. Either way...
Well, I guess to an extent, time might maybe justify this slightly more if they actually utilize Kate in any interesting way.
Kate is the War Minister, preordained
Oh,
by
see, there you go.
Lake.
Actually, that might be it right there. You cracked the code.
If that's the code, then we need more crack.
Oh, snap, it's getting crack up in here. But yeah, that's all I've got. And as always, you can reach out to us again, either down below here on YouTube, or you can add us at Brothers Mahoney on X/Twitter. And yeah, I've got nothing more. So thanks for listening. You've been enjoying the Brothers Mahoney. As always, I've been Michael.
And I've been James.
Thanks very much for listening. Have yourself a pleasant evening.